Before we get to your scheduled video, please remember that likes and comments tell YouTube to promote our work to other people, and subscribing to the channel tells you when something new drops. You can also head to the link tree in the description to peruse my books, join us on Discord, or support us on Patreon. You can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling and Violent Profiles early, as well as a load of other treats. Even just $1 a month earns you a name drop for being cool. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Greetings and salutations, fellow people who better be telling the truth. It is I, Eric J. Chucci, joined as always by the boy, and
Hey.
I completely forgot to pause for your hey. I'm so sorry, brother. Have the stage.
Today we're talking about Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree.
I just wanted you to say hey.
No.
Do not overstep.
Never.
Continue.
Did we actually ever do a podcast on Elden Ring?
I don't know that we did like a proper one. I know we talked about it briefly among some other stuff. Whatever WWE game had come out that year, I think, and some other things we were doing, but I don't know if we ever sat down and were just like...
So Eldor wrong. Okay, so also kind of that, but mostly the DLC and our thoughts, feelings, and experiences with it.
Are you finished?
I've decided yes.
Okay. Before we get to that, we do need to talk about who's cool. We are contractually obligated as government-appointed coolness
Arbiters.
arbiters. Yes, thank you. That was the word I wanted. We have to. It is our duty. So that's going to be DG on the tip of your tongue, Destru City KTL, A Guy from Ohio, Passion Killer 711, Rob, just the one there, I can't really, and Harmony. Also same. Anyway, you two can be cool if you give us $1 over on the Patreon. You get episodes of Journey of Wrestling a week early. You get whatever limited series I'm doing, we're doing, someone's doing, all at once. And you get my eternal gratitude for your $1. It doesn't cost you much, and it means a lot to me.
So Shadow of the Erdtree.
So, Shadow of the Erdtree.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the story, mechanics, your first experience through the DLC? Where we drop it?
Let's start at the end. Full spoilers. I thought it was very disappointing. I'm joking about the full spoilers. Yeah, I guess we should probably do a quick spoiler-free review. I mean, we're pretty far past when the spoiler ban would be lifted for this. We did not do this in a timely fashion. It's a difficult game, and we wanted to experience it all. I think Shadow of the Erdtree, in brief, spoiler-less, is one of the best Soulsborne experiences I've had in years. Although Another Crab's Treasure was very good. Might even be better. What about you?
I think Shadow of the Erdtree is an excellent example of ambition. Because I think it was pretty ambitious of them to take the most successful thing they've done, the open world formula of Elden Ring, and mix back in some of the much more constrained and like structurally linear Dark Souls style of map design. I don't know that it was always successful, at least for me. But it was certainly ambitious to do that, because straying from that design is arguably what got them their most successful thing to date. And they weren't afraid to bring back out the old hits, to play the favorites.
In that sense, that's part of why I enjoyed it so much. I would say I enjoyed my first time through Elden Ring, minus some frustrations because of bad decision making. But every subsequent time I've tried to play Elden Ring, I have had a very difficult opening, to the point that I have not beaten the game a second time.
Whereas I have beaten the game many, many times.
Right. And this just comes down to play style. I'll be brief about it for the sake of not being too self-indulgent, even though our logo is bigger than the Shadow of the Erdtree logo on the title card. It's... You are content to collect all the map markers, as it were, whether that's the grace or the steals or what have you, and then go back and like get through and get stuff as you go. You're someone who feels comfortable following a build that you're recommended,
Or like one that I've intuited from game knowledge I have.
and you can intuit that because you have that game knowledge.
I think the easiest way for me to explain it is I'm perfectly fine to set the table for myself and cook my own dinner to enjoy my dinner. So if the beginning of my playthrough of Elden Ring is like 40 minutes to an hour of just chores, of just go this, go here, do this, kill this thing, get this trinket, get that trinket, get your weapon, gather up some stones, get it to a decent level, and then you may play the game, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Following your metaphor, I'm a disgusting, screaming child who can't have anything but dino nuggies.
There's probably a better way you could have raised that, friend.
I don't think so. I think you set me up for that, you monster. No. The key difference is, while that takes you about 2 hours, it takes me about 20.
Yeah, well, I've done it a bunch.
Sure.
And I think the better version of your version is, if I'm someone who is perfectly fine to make a big involved meal, to eat my big involved meal, you are someone who would rather graze as they cook.
And I mean, I guess in that metaphor, it's not. I wouldn't have chosen that because of my perspective, and I think it's valuable that we started with you in this sense, because I can explain it much more specifically, my problems much more specifically. It's often easier to explain a problem than it is I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah.
I think the first, let's call it 2 zones in Elden Ring, that is to say Limgrave and the Weeping Peninsula, are too big. And I don't mean that there's too much to do. There's just a lot of territory to cross, and it requires a little bit of like extra finesse. And as somebody who prefers to play the game exploratorily, slowly, I'm not speed running this in any sense of the word.
You're not in a hurry.
No, and that's why I enjoy the game. That's why I enjoyed Dark Souls, 1. It's why it finally hooked me, is when I got that I'm supposed to be taking this slowly and appreciating everything and soaking in the way they deliver the lore. This was something, a really long time ago, and I'm going to misquote this because it was a long time ago. Aaron Hansen was making a half-baked allusion about video games using food, as you have done. And I have been taught to consume Soulsborns like a gourmet meal. You take your bite slowly, you savor it, you appreciate everything because it was prepared with expert skill and it was very expensive. It's not, a burger and fries that you got from McDonald's where you just shove that shit in your mouth as fast as possible so that food go in, move on with life. And that kind of, I think he was talking about desserts, and he might have been talking about Castlevania, which is apt, but to approach this game with the sensibility that I need to rush often to sequence breaky or bendy points on the map before I actually begin to play the game the way I'd prefer to, which is to, clear a zone. And, not necessarily zone by map zone, but, clear a dungeon. Go through and get every little thing in the dungeon, fight all the guys in the dungeon, and then be done with the dungeon forever until I decide to play the game again. It just feels wrong. And so much of what I'm doing is, not fun in terms of gameplay because I'm just speeding with my horse to the next destination because I can't fight these guys, and I just need the widget they're standing in front of so that I may enjoy the rest of the game. Now, New Game Plus alleviates this somewhat, obviously, because you start with all the equipment you already have gathered up. If you want to do a certain build, you probably have all, if not most, of the stuff for that build. But Shadow of the Erdtree, especially because we can't New Game Plus it when you play it for the first time, it definitely feeds you the, as you mentioned, the Dark Souls experience, the Bloodborne experience. There are open places where you can enjoy Torrent. Use him to run from one place to another. And there are jumping puzzles that require Torrent. We are going to slowly start weaving in spoilers, so if you absolutely don't want spoilers, now's probably the time to check out. But by and large, it is a more...
Almost all of the big zone changes are gated by a legacy dungeon of one type or another. Now, there are ways you can find around that. You can go around and find the spirit spring to jump past one of them, and so on and so forth. But for some, that's not true. You have to eat your vet. You have to do the whole legacy dungeon to get to the next zone.
I would say it's very much like Mega Man 7 as compared to the other Mega Man games. In every other Mega Man game, you can pick which level you want to go to from all the Robot Masters. In Mega Man 7, and I think 8, but 8 sucks, so I don't play it. You get 4, you beat all of them, and then you get to do the other 4. And there is kind of a halfway point in Shadow of the Erdtree, past which you can access whatever you want. But, like, you do have to do basically all of that halfway point, most of that halfway point, before you're allowed to progress on. So it does eliminate some of the absolute freedom that the core Elden Ring experience provides.
Yeah, I would say that is and that's definitely an intentional design element. They do that intentionally. Shadow of the Erdtree's map design is very interesting. It doesn't quite keep through to the end of the DLC. Things get a little more wild later. But the first, 3 zones in the DLC are reflections of zones on the main map, which I find neat.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we're just going to heap praise on the game, the area design, the map design, the lore connections, there is a GIF on the internet you can find by Googling it, where someone overlaid the Shadow of the Erdtree map with the Elden Ring map, and it just sort of fits in the middle. And that's beautiful, because it answers some questions like, where did the dragons attack Leyndell from?
Oh, there. It's just...
Yeah.
That's why, because Jagged Peak is right there.
And it answers so much stuff so easily. This is, and before it was Elden Ring itself, this is the most lore-forward piece of a Soulsborne that I have experienced.
Yeah, rarely in a Soulsborne do you find, journal pages. This is an Ubisoft game.
Yeah.
But there are zones in Shadow of the Erdtree where there are journal pages that you can read like you're reading science logs in a Mass Effect game. It is a big departure in terms of how it delivers lore.
Yes.
It's much more straightforward.
And it's still esoteric. There are still things that you kind of have to be paying attention to the item descriptions to answer. But a lot of NPCs are very straightforward with their intentions.
They say that shit with their chest. They say what they mean. Now, is it completely straightforward? No. To get one of the coolest reveals in the game, you have to go down a big hole, down another big hole, down another big hole, down the biggest hole, fight a boss, go to a secret zone, and voluntarily kill yourself many, many times for no discernible benefit. And then, and only then, do you get a little special secret nugget of lore. But when you get that special secret nugget, it's not an item where if you read the item description, there are implications, blah, blah, blah. Someone says, hey, this is what's happening.
Until you said kill yourself several times for no reason, I didn't know which of these series of giant holes you were talking about.
There are many.
There are many. And I love it. Before we get too far past it, I do want to say the first thing I did in Shadow of the Erdtree was walk the circumference of that little opening land area, the gravesite plane.
Gravesite plane, the lime grave equivalent. Grave.
You can say it however you want. It's a made-up word. By the Welsh, I believe.
Speaking of made-up words, I think probably what I'm going to end up doing on subsequent playthroughs of Shadow of the Erdtree is try and bend it to my preferred playstyle as hard as possible by just going and picking up every Skadoodle Tree shard I can find that's available to me before beating any bosses.
I think it's pronounced scatological fragment.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Skibbity Toilet Fragment.
All right. Well, thanks for coming to the Two Nerds podcast. We had a good run. Anyway, I walked the circumference of that, and you can see over the edge many of the other areas.
But they are just wholly and completely inaccessible from that zone.
Yeah, but like it's a wonderful sort of teaser of what's to come, and how smart to leave that in there. You, as a veteran player, get to have that. I'll go there someday.
I bet you I can get over there.
There was one part of the game, around middle to late game, where I had uncovered most of the areas, like 99% of them, except for a couple weird islands up north. I thought. And I was like, man, I think from my little opening path, the only place I never got to go to was that giant mountain. But that makes sense. It's just a mountain. It's just a set piece. And then I found my way to the giant mountain.
It's not just a set piece. There's a man up there. He has something to say. He has something he needs to get off his chest.
He do be yelling.
To be clear, I really like Shadow of the Erdtree. I don't like it as much as the base Elden Ring game, because it's just structured in a way that I love. Before Elden Ring, Dark Souls 3 was just objectively my favorite game. I had beaten it way more than any other game. I had replayed it way more than any other game. So it just, obviously. But now I'm used to it. I've seen Paris. I can't go back.
Whereas, for me, I am so frustrated that I have to play most of the rest of Elden Ring. And I'm talking about my skill level, let's be honest, all of it, because I need those levels to experience something I find so much more enjoyable.
And that's totally valid as well, because, I still, even with this is honestly a minor complaint, I love all of the new lore. I love the new zones. They're beautiful. They're wildly pretty. Even the ugly ones. I love the stealth section. The not mandatory, you can get good past it, but you probably should just sneak. Stealth check? Oh yeah, you can get good past it.
What are you talking about, stealth section?
There's a section you gotta hide in, remember? The spooky town?
Spooky town?
Do you not... Midra's place, man.
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did stealth through that. Yeah, you kind of got to, unless you played a lot of Sekiro. And assume that Sekiro is the answer.
Or Google it.
Yeah, or Google it.
But I think that was probably... This is hilarious because my favorite Elden Ring YouTuber hates this section with a fiery passion. I love it. It was probably one of my favorite sections of the whole game.
I agree.
It's a wild deviation in gameplay that I hadn't really seen in a Souls game do very well before. To be fair, I haven't played Sekiro very much. I played a bit of it. And as I understand it, a lot of that game is stealth.
Can be, yeah.
I love Midra's mansion. I think it's a really cool dungeon. Not too long, very flavorful, and Midra's hands down one of my favorite bosses in the DLC. He's so dope.
I would say that, and we will be doing a podcast. You should see in the near future. I don't know if I want to do them back to back in terms of release, but you will see it. Rating the bosses. I would say one of my favorites is probably Mesmer. From this DLC, anyway.
Oh yeah, Mesmer. I didn't fight him enough.
It only took me a handful of times.
Yeah, only a handful of times. I guess Midra only took me twice, but he was so cool.
I was lower levels when I went there the first time, so I fought him a couple times and then went, I'm not supposed to be here right now.
I will say that is something Shadow of the Erdtree does try and signpost really strongly. All the bosses will have, you need the Shadow Tree shards. You need them. Unless you are Elden God, unless you are goated, which I am not, you need those.
Well, and that's something I observed as we were playing it. They really watched what players were doing and adjusted the Shadow of the Erdtree experience to meet that energy. Because it feels like they expect you to be using Mimic Tier, which they nerfed to hell. And
just by making his AI worse, too. The worst way to nerf him.
Yeah. And a lot of, really cheesy strats expect you to be doing that already.
Well, yeah, it's definitely hard. I would say it's harder than the base game, but in a different way than like Ring City is harder than Dark Souls 3. Ring City is definitely harder than Dark Souls 3, but Ring City is harder than Dark Souls 3 because everything has a million more hit points.
Yeah, this is a lot about adjustments to AI reactions and specific resistances to things we have been leaning on in the main game.
Yeah, they didn't just add a million hit points onto everything. They did also do that, but you get your Skadoodle Tree shards and you're fine. They made the AIs for the bosses in the DLC they're just smarter. They're more aggressive.
Oh yeah.
They're in your grill more. Almost all of them have multiple phases, multiple things they do, different ways they engage. In the base game, there's this fun thing Horaloo does, and Godfrey. Both phases do this, where he reacts dynamically to how you fight. If you're casting spells, he's up in your grill. If you're fighting, he's a lot more like big swings and giving and time to breathe. He reacts to you to keep the fight challenging. Every boss in the DLC does this, and they do it a lot more.
There was only one boss I got stuck on, other than the final boss, and I should have taken that as a signpost that there was other stuff to do, because a lot of the side content I didn't get to until I was doing endgame cleanup. Because I went down 2 paths to the south of the main castle and thought that was all the paths.
There are like 7.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. And I could have done all that and had so many more levels and Shadow Tree shards. Now, I would have encountered more bosses that I would have had to come back to later. But, like, I could have done that and been strong enough to fight that stupid hippo on my own terms.
And Elden Ring does Elden Ring you will run into an enemy and go, I shouldn't be here. And ideally, you move away and go do something else. Shadow of the Erdtree's a lot less subtle about it.
And I appreciate that because I am one of the people, and I'm so glad this happened to others, but I got stuck in Caelid way before I should have been in Caelid.
Well, because from the first zone, it's just right.
You just go right there. There's no weird boss, there's nothing, so I figured it was maybe the second zone.
No, the second zone is past the first big boss.
Yeah.
And in Shadow of the Erdtree, they would have that exact same layout, but there would also be a big boss in front of Caelid that you have to go through a legacy dungeon. There is a Stormveil castle between you and every new zone.
I will say I did the same thing in this game. The first place I went to is the area around the place that leads to endgame for Shadow of the Erdtree. It's probably one of the harder areas in the game that isn't gated really hard. Behind, like, secret doors and shit.
Oh, it's naturally where the that's the first big legacy dungeon the DLC is guiding you towards.
But again, there was other stuff that I could have gone and done that I didn't find out about until later, or way later in the game. And to its credit, even though some of the mini-bosses were pretty tough and really frustrating to get around, whether, through or literally around,
that's the second one for me. I am a regular enemy run paster. That's me. If I can find a way to yabba dabba do my way past you to get where I'm going, I'm gonna fucking do that.
I follow the rule, and I don't know if this is a broad rule or just something I stole from Super Beard Bros. If I see it, I have to kill it once. Now, I follow that rule not out of some point of pride. I just like the game. So it's a great way to keep me honest. It's like I don't run in a Final Fantasy game.
For me, the running past things is a different game. Like, it is part of the game. It is
Sure.
Mirror's Edge. I am playing a parkour simulator.
Yeah. And that's valid. I just don't get any juice out of that.
Yeah.
That's what I do after I have already beat those guys once and I'm just trying to get to the boss, which at this stage, we don't have those Dark Souls runs.
No, they don't do those
There's
anymore.
no Gravelord Nito, oh my god, I have to run past so many wheel skeletons problems, and there haven't been for a while.
This DLC does finally unseat the all-time world champ of bonfire across from a bonfire. That is the Grand Library and Dragon Slayer armor bonfires in Dark Souls 3. The bonfire before and after the hippo is the funniest bonfire gap I've ever seen in my life. I think if my character laid down and stretched out his weapon, I might be able to touch both.
I don't care. Do it. First of all, because it's nice to always have a place to teleport to. Now, I don't think you need both because they're not far apart enough to like make the run worse. But it would feel weird if you beat a health bar boss.
And there wasn't a grace.
Yeah. So, for that reason, yeah,
You
sure.
know, the funny thing is, for the longest time, I thought there wasn't one after Fire Giant. Because it's out of the way. It's over.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
It's,
yeah.
it's off. It's the opposite direction of where your eye leads. Big bowl. I just thought there wasn't one. No, there is.
That's how I lost the most souls I've ever lost in any FromSoft game.
Same. And that's why.
We secure the bag now. That was the advice my compatriot here gave me.
Always secure the bag. Do not progress forward until you get your paper.
Let's touch on this briefly because we should probably move into talking about the actual plot and whatnot now. But I do want to say, speaking of the other Soulsborne games, my God, the references. I have never seen so many references to old Soulsborne content. So many obvious ones.
They really, like I said, there's a lot of ways. Shadow of the Erdtree is a lot less subtle.
If this was Miyazaki's victory lap, if he was done after this, I would believe it. I would cry.
Yeah.
Like, not really, but like, you know, I'd be devastated. Like if a certain luchador were going to a different company. Anyway. But it's such a greatest hits. It's such honor and homage. And I love the idea. It's probably just a reference. But like, what if it isn't? You know, what does it mean? And I know it's going to take Vati Vidya forever to get to it because he's got like actual lore videos to do. But the speculative lore on what this could possibly represent, there's fucking Black Knights.
Yeah. They're just straight up Black Knights.
There's Winter Lanterns. There's so much stuff that's like, you don't belong here. I haven't seen you in a long time, my friend. And that's just really cool. And it really kept me going, even like at the hardest parts of the game emotionally. But plot, and I think I'm going to let you take the lead on this because you care more.
I really like the plot of Shadow of the Erdtree. It's much more forward than the plot of anything from previous FromSoft anything. Except Sekiro, I as I understand it, that's a very plot-heavy game. But I haven't played it. Past, like, the first boss. But I'm bad at pairing.
Yeah, same.
Long story short, I'm bad at pairing, so I don't play Sekiro because that's what the game is. Anyway, I like where they went with Mikola. I really like the themes of the DLC. This is a fairly heavy spoiler, but I'm gonna still be kind of vague. I think the storytelling around carving off pieces of yourself in order to fit into the box that is required to ascend the social hierarchy is perfect. The carving off the beautiful person you will become and leaving her in a hole in the dirt because that's not who gets to be God is amazing. I just think it's excellent storytelling. It's an excellent Mikola's story in Shadow of the Erdtree is an excellent tale of tragedy, of someone trying to fix the world because they're stuck in the mindset of a child and naively think that just make everyone be nice to each other is the best way to fix the world. And then he breaks himself trying to make that a reality come hell or high water. That's great.
I agree. That's really good. I think really honestly my only big complaint about the story is where it wound up.
You don't like that final boss isn't a horrible, hideous freak, but is instead emotionally and thematically consistent with the rest of the plot?
Yes.
I know. Look, you think I'm being mean about this? No, that's exactly what he wants, the giant worm.
I mean, so I didn't care for the Elden Beast either. When I first saw it, there was a moment of, oh wow, how interesting. And it's a neat design, but look, it doesn't hit. It doesn't hit like Radigan. That was a way better final boss.
Radigan is the final boss of Elden Ring. Squirmy Wormy, the glass noodle is just the thing I have to chase around for a while afterwards.
Oh man, neither of us have fought him since the.
I'm looking forward to that.
buff,
I'm gonna beat the base game again just so I can run his ass down on torrent and be like, "Where you going? Where you going? I just want to talk."
But especially, I'm gonna try to be spoiler light here to be kind. When you find what is at the bottom of that aforementioned series of holes where you have to die a lot, and the visual presented there, I was really hoping the final boss was going to look more like that.
But it's thematically that's the opposite of what the theming is.
They do go in the other direction. It is more George R.R. Martin, and I mean that complimentarily. It has strong themes. They just weren't the themes I was hoping to see.
But like that, the thing that is in the bottom of that hole is strange and otherworldly and beautiful. And Mikola had to divest himself of that, and what's left is vanilla and straight-laced and perfect. And I say that as a derogatory term.
Sure. In a very Game of Thrones fashion. You are left with some Lannisters, I feel. Pick a couple. You're probably going to be hitting the nail on the head. It was a cool fight. It wasn't among my favorites. I thought it was a little, I don't know, like, this is the one that was artificially difficult. And
thematically, I love the final boss. I think it's perfect. I love the surroundings. I love the arena. I love what the boss is and exactly what it is. I think that's an excellent button, and it's gross a little in a way that makes sense for Marika's family for lots of reasons, but it's bullshit. Mechanically, fuck that boss.
It's not as offensive to me as my affectionate nickname for the Elden Beast, Diet Midir. But
that's just true.
Yes. And I mean Diet Midir in the sense that it is everything I like about Midir being removed, but the shell of it remaining the same. This is its own thing, and I commend them for doing something like this, because it's your final DLC for this game, your only DLC. It's a big adventure. This is the capstone. There's not a real ending to this DLC. It's go back to the rest of the game and finish that. So you need something that's dramatic enough to stand in for whatever weird Soulsborne ending you would want.
And the weird Soulsborne monster is there. She's just at the bottom of a different hole.
I don't have allergies, so that didn't threaten me as much.
Not that one, the other one.
Oh.
That's right. That's not a joke we did.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I bet you did, bud.
I really did. That
had big Bloodborne energy. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, it was specifically had a lot of tendencies of a Bloodborne boss that I am quite fond of.
And the storytelling that leads you up to that boss is very Bloodborne, and that was a very Bloodborne area.
Well, and that's the thing about this melding of stories and all these references that really gets me, is because all of these weird outer gods vying for control over the lands between
and the lands of shadow.
They have such big, creatures in Bloodborne energy. Obviously intentionally. It's all Cthulhu mythos takeoffs and stuff. And I find them fascinating, and I would like just a little more. And we got a lot for some of them.
Yeah.
The way they develop Moog and the entity he worships.
Absolutely complete meme side note. My boy Moog, Lord of Blood, beating the allegations. Absolutely king shit.
I kind of want to go back and see our Elden Ring Vanilla tier list podcast to see if I tried to defend Moog, because I feel like at the time I was like, I don't know. I don't think that's the case. I just don't feel like it. But
Moog beat the allegations. He beat that shit on the court. Good for Moog.
yeah, good for Moog. Melania not looking as great, not in the same reason, but in general.
Melania also probably Mika brain poison, if
absolutely,
we're being real.
1000%. Yeah, we got more about the Crucible and what that is and what that means, and that's awesome. That was one of the big lore questions I had. We got more about, without saying too much, the fingers.
We got so many answers about America,
Yeah,
and omens, and why omens are a blasphemy in the religion of the
Golden Order.
In the Golden Order, but why America might have had some omen children anyway. It all ties in together so well.
I just wanted a couple crumbs more. And I'm not going to get it, and that's okay, but man, just a couple. And they even introduce what might be a new deity that the troll-looking guys worship. It's all just very fascinating. But in asking for more, it is a Soulsborne game. I mean, we shouldn't have it, I think. I should be left wanting.
Soulsborne games always leave you wanting.
Yes, and that's
you
great.
You never get all the answers.
No, I think we shouldn't. I think having to fill in the blanks on things as simple as what is Solaire's true destiny? Who is Solaire? To go back to the beginning.
Having to fill in... There are just so many blanks in Dark Souls 3's story.
Yeah.
There's so much room to fill in things. That's one of the actually great things about the general vagary of Soulsborne lore, is there's a lot of room in the elbows. You got space to work, and I like that.